much to Kristen's chagrin.
Welcome back. This is the afternoon session of the Safari Seminar.
Starting out here in a minute, Holly Orr is going to talk to us, and she's got a list of frequently asked questions for novices, which most of you in here are novices, so that worked out well. As I said before lunch, Holly has trained quite a few of the novice winners over the last 10 years. Holly's finished 13 water safaris, and she currently holds the women's C1 record and is former record holder for the overall women's record and the overall women's solo record. So when she speaks, she knows that of which she speaks. Somebody asked me outside, what's the number one thing you need to do this race? I will give you the advice that was given to me in 1984 as we passed down the Rio Grande. My roommate at the time had won the race in 1983. And I said to him, I said, what do I need to do this race? And he said, an overwhelming desire to hurt yourself. And, you know, and I found that to be pretty apt advice over the last 30-odd years. So if you want to know what you need, an overwhelming desire to hurt yourself. With that, I'm going to turn you over to Holly. I'll probably jump in from time to time about different equipment things. And, you know, we've got some good resources here today. Holly also owns Paddle with Style, and so she rents boats out, and she sells out her own paddles. Some of you were talking to Dwayne from TG Canoe Livery. I think they don't rent boats out, but they sell boats, and also sell equipment. Anyway, on that list is the different folks that there are other folks that make money off of the water safari. However, they don't contribute back to the race, so the only ones I'm plugging today are the folks who are our sponsors. So, with that, yeah? Yeah, there's some material in the back. I know there's a book for sale about the race. There's some other information, these handouts that Kristen's done about team captain stuff. I haven't been able to get the light to change, so because I'm not that smart. I should have messed with it during lunch, but I also get tired of people, so I have to go walk around from time to time. So I'm going to turn you over to Holly.
All right, guys. So frequently asked questions. Some of these you probably have in your notebook to ask. When we're talking about certain things, feel free to raise your hand. And then also, those of you who've done the race, can you raise your hand? Because I know we have several. Okay, so when we're talking about like favorite foods and things, that's going to be different for different folks. So, you know, Kristen and Libby and Bob, y'all feel free to jump in there too. So, I don't know how well you can see these, but it's do you sleep? And the answer is maybe. Some people do, some don't. And then how do you sleep? I don't know if you can see this at the sleep hammock. We've talked about it's a bit like a spray skirt. So a lot of times one guy will lay back in the boat while the other guy paddles. Do you need a sleep hammock to sleep? No, you can pull over like Andrew here and pass out on the gravel bank. You can also just lay it on your seat. A lot of times I'll get on my knees and I'll put the seat that I'm sitting on, like right here on my body, and I'll put my water jugs back here and then have a little pad and it's sleepy. It's comfortable after you've been sitting for 50 hours, other than that it's not be. Any questions on sleeping? No? Okay, also, how do you stay awake? That's a big one. How do you stay awake? Well, you can sing, you can do Tarzan reenactment yelling, some people do caffeine. If you do caffeine, be careful with that because you will spike and be wide awake and then you'll have a hard crash. Also, I've made the mistake my early years of taking a no-dose without eating food. That doesn't settle very well. You may see that no-dose come up again. So if you do decide to do caffeine, be careful with that. And sleep. What do you eat? Okay, guys who've raced before, popcorn style, what is your favorite safari food?
Libby?
Well, I mean, I do liquid diet, so I guess on the side, either like fruit like watermelon or goldfish or just something quick. So. Okay,
so Libby likes mostly liquid Spiz.
Yep.
Okay, so Spiz is something a lot of us use. I doctor mine up. Who else in here is raced? In the back, what's some of your favorite foods?
Peaches, the little peaches that
Oh yeah, the little fruit cups. Yes. Love the fruit cups. Or Jay's favorite, or Team Pat. I've got that a million times, so maybe
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich is Jay's favorite because he doesn't like to do a lot of liquids. So chips with salt.
Okay, chips, Cliff Bars. I love avocados with salt added to them. I think the main thing with the food is you want a well-balanced diet. A lot of the energy food is sugar, sugar, sugar. We want to make sure we balance the electrolytes, the sodium, the potassium, and the carbs and all that together.
Well, protein bars be good?
Protein bars?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be one.
One thing is we always say practice with what you're going to eat during the race. Don't on race morning decide, oh, I want to try such and such. I'll take that in the race, or I'll have my team captain give that to me. More than likely, that will not go well for you. Try something new during the race if you haven't ever tried in practice. So experiment with what your body can handle.
You practice like you want to race because you're going to race like you practice. That goes with clothes. We're going to talk about clothes. That goes with food. So food, experiment with. The other thing is you don't want to do the 3 big meals. You want to do steady food throughout the whole time. There's been a lot of science research on how much your body can metabolize within a given hour. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. Most people figure to eat like 200-300 calories max per hour. Everybody's body's different. Also, how hard are you working? But for me personally, I'll consume probably like 200 calories every hour. A lot of times it's through a handful of chips or a bite bottle squeeze. But I want to keep my energy level even. And I tell you, at 2 a.m. after I've been paddling 40-something hours, it's tough to eat. But I know I have to eat, because in the safari, once you go down, it's really hard to get back up. As other races that maybe are 10 or 12 hours long, when you crater, you're almost done. The safari is not that way, so don't let yourself go down. And if you do sleep, and this is real important for team captains, eat before you sleep. So eat before you sleep, and then eat as soon as you wake up, because your body's going to be burning all that off. Okay, the other big question is who sits where in the boat, and what is their responsibility? Who's in the front of the boat? Who's in the back of the boat? Does the guy in the back of the boat only do the steering? The guy in the back of the boat is responsible for the big picture. The guy in the front of the boat, the bow, is responsible for like the here and now. But both ends of the boat are responsible for steering the boat. And there's different draw strokes and things like that you can do. If you're in a multi-man, a lot of times we rotate seats. That's kind of a little more, is anybody like dead set on going in a big boat? If it's your first year, I would advise not to do that.
I think we have maybe 1 or 2
Couple.
people that are interested in the lead person.
Okay, well, 3-person, a lot of times you'll switch around positions. Once again, practice what you're going to do. Anything to add on that? Seat position?
It's certainly, it's more difficult in the bow in terms of pure making the boat go forward. However, there's different skill sets. I mean, some people are better boat drivers, some people are better bowmen. Some people really only belong in the middle of the boat.
The bow is kind of, you're the metronome.
Yeah.
You got to hold a nice, even stroke rate. The guy in the back, you want to be on the opposite side of him doing the exact same time. If you were in marching band or playing in music and you got that one person who's out of time, it's the same in the canoe. If somebody's out of time, it's just not as smooth, and that means it's not as efficient. And while it's a lot of work, it doesn't have to be, don't make it harder than it has to be. Okay? Yeah, a lot of what's come natural. The other thing too with the seat positions is you want to make sure the boat is level, opposed to, I didn't bring my little canoe, but the seats slide because if I'm racing with my 10-year-old son and I'm in the back of the boat here and he's in the front, the boat's probably going to be doing this. So the sliding seats allow me to slide the seats forward to get the boat level. We want the boat level to maybe slightly bow down for shallow waters and things like that. So if you are changing seats, when you get your boat, make sure you slide those seats accordingly so people put lines on the outside of the boat. An easy way is just put some water in the boat, and wherever it runs, you know if your bow or stern heavy. But you want to aim for, you know, flat to slightly bow down. That's going to really help handling the boat. Okay? Anything to add? Questions on who sits where and boat trim?
Yeah, the more trim your boat is as you go down the river, you know, like Holly said, if you're stern heavy, especially, wind becomes a major issue. You know, it's trying to turn that boat on a regular pace. You know, Bob has raced and cruisers quite a bit. You may have something on that as
Well,
well.
also, if you're way too stern down, you're gonna drag, any shallow water sucks you down, and you're gonna have trouble when you hit the bottom more. So a good rule of thumb is try to go level if you can, or a little bow down, like she said. But if you're stern heavy, you can turn the boat pretty well, but in shallow water gears, you'll also drag out and sucks down in shallow water. So anyway, having the ability to slide those seats is really crucial in trimming the boat.
The other thing for his comfort is your seat padding. I have seen some people put layers upon layers upon layers upon layers because their butt hurts, when the reality is the seat needed to be adjusted, the level of the seat. Because once again, if you get Dwayne to rig it or Jay to rig it, you know, the seat's probably going to be where it needs to be. If you rig it yourself, it may not. Different pains will come with different seat angles, but we're still on the seat for 100 hours, right? That's a long time to be sitting. A lot of times we'll cut notches in the back of the seat pad, and that allows for the tailbone, the pressure to be released off that tailbone a little bit. I'm a huge fan of that. Do y'all like notches? Some people don't care. Some do.
I have a permanent callus on my tailbone, but yeah, you know, and it depends on how your butt shaped. For that matter, if you've got a big butt, your tailbone's not going to be hitting the back of the seat, and if you're buttless like I am, you know, you're going to be rubbing. And then it's different for women as well because, you know, my hips ain't made for making babies.
And on to the next thing. Okay.
Well, there's different types of seats, and some are more comfortable.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Yeah, everybody's different, so you need to try things out and how it is.
And this is where I'm a fan of doing longer training runs opposed to just 2 hours, because it takes that 4 hours seems to be a pretty common wall when you just physically start feeling like, oh, the seat doesn't feel right, oh, my back hurts, oh, my tailbone's running. So do a 4, 6, 8 hour training run so you can figure these things out. And, you know, bring a notebook, note it down. Maybe bring, if this seat's awkward, bring an extra seat pad and trade it halfway, trade it during the training run. So figure that out now. Don't wait until the end of May, the 1st of June to try it, because all of a sudden you go by Jay's boat and you're like, man, he's won the safari. He's drinking this drink mix and he's using this seat pad, so I'm going to do it. And you decide that at check-in on Friday. It's a bad idea. Try it now. Okay. Any questions on seat padding or seat adjustments? Okay, jug foam. Dwayne's out here. He sells this at TG Canoes. You don't know it. Jay sells it. This is pretty common for holding the water jugs, your high-end Coleman jugs. With people use different types of hosing. Some people get a food grade. This is a used jug apparently. You can go to Lowe's or the hardware store, Apple hardware store, and get this. Some people get medical grade, food grade, so you don't get the weird plastic taste in there. One tip I like to do with my jugs, we'll see if Jay does it. He does. Nope. Okay. Is I put a small piece of tape here on the inside to keep it from pulling out. His is tight enough in there, but different hoses fit a little different. So if it's loose, and my team captain gives it, or I step on my hose, and it gets pulled, and now I'm drinking, and I think I'm out of water, when in reality, I just pulled my hose out. So make sure it's in there tight, or put a rubber band works really well, or a small piece.
And what she said about the hose reaching the bottom of the jug is important too. That's one of the reasons that even though nowadays you can get your jugs pre-mixed, we still have the pop top in them, is because you can see the team captain can see if that hose is all the way down. And you don't have to dork around with all the twisting it around through the ice and everything. All that water goes straight into the top.
Also,
Some people put a little, like a camelback little valve on the end where you also can use it when you don't drain. You have to be careful with those because you can drain them out. If you're 10 miles from where you're supposed to get water, that can be a problem. So you have to, maybe you put Velcro on where you can stick them on the side of the boat, or have a harness around your neck where you have Velcro and it'll be right in your mouth. But you have to be careful, it will drain out, so.
yeah, so if you don't have a pipe valve, blow back, like empty the hose. Blow some bubbles, helps keep your mix up. I like having Velcro on the end of mine, even if I do have a pipe valve, because man, what's in the bottom of that boat, I don't want my drink hose with dead mayflies and shoe goo and people maybe miss when they're peeing out of the boats, you know, all that good stuff. It's kind of special. And then the jug foam, this is a high density foam. Probably give us the exact what it is.
It's called mini cell foam, and it is the coolest stuff on the planet. You can saw it, you can machine it, you can do just about anything you want to with it, and it's significant flotation. So anytime you put a jug holder or pill holder or whatever in with that, it adds to the flotation of your boat. Plus, it doesn't weigh much and it won't absorb any water. You know, bead styrofoam will eventually allow water to soak in. You know, you're gonna, as you're paddling down the river, see somebody's styrofoam ice chest that's gotten away from them, and you pick it up, and it's pretty waterlogged. The same thing, even the expandable urethane foams. If for some reason you break that slit crust on it, it will eventually allow water to get down in there and hold weight. This, you can poke holes in it and do whatever the heck you want to with it. It's never going to absorb any water.
And it will last for years.
What's the material?
Minicell, MINICELL. And TG's carries that. I carry it. It's not the cheapest stuff on the planet, but you know, I don't know of anything better.
And then the other thing is, how do I cut a hole? Some people get it real pretty. You know, you can use a bandsaw if you have one, or a fish fillet knife, or a coffee can. Kick it in there. Jay's got, I have a picture of what I've made. It's in the back of my truck. And then how to glue it. Contact cement is probably the most preferred way. If you've never used contact cement, read the instructions, because a lot of people paint, glue it together. Contact cement, you have to paint the boat, paint the jug foam, let it sit for a few minutes, and then stick it in. And I can literally, if I clean both ends and it fits right, I can pick my boat up by the foam that my water goes, because it's that secure. So contact cement is the preferred way.
Less is more on contact.
Yeah.
Yeah, less is more.
There's a reason there are instructions on products. It's not because that they want just to print something to fill up the blank space on the packaging. Read the instructions before you use contact cement. My preferred brand is Wellwood in the red can, and I think both Kristen and Holly just said it, less is more. If you put a big blob of it on there on both sides and then you stick it, it'll stick, but it doesn't have any shear strength, so it's going to eventually just peel right up. Where if you put it on thin, like the instructions say, you can dang near lift up the whole boat by your jug.
And I was gonna say, I don't know about Jay, but I speak from experience on that.
The other thing too is that if you do a good job on when you cut these, it'll hold your jug in there even in wreck boats, which you'll need to dump. You can actually dump, you turn it back over quickly, make sure you don't drain out, but you can, without taking them out, you can dump your boat, because you don't have a baler in the aluminum boat.
Next is paddles. Jay, did you want to talk about paddles?
I can. So, in single blade paddles, paddles, and I know I talked to some of you outside today. This is, oh, you didn't watch this after we got off the river here. That's not my job. So Zaparel paddles, single blade paddles are pretty much the gold standard. There are some higher end paddles. You probably don't need to start there. So somebody did the math at some point over, you can go get a wooden paddle and do it, but I would say, as a general rule, buy the best paddle that you feel comfortable paying for. Because by the time you don't lift that weight over, I don't know, what's an ounce a minute, and then every 16 minutes that's a pound, all of a sudden you realize paddles get pretty darn heavy. Or I guess we were talking at lunch, go to the gym and find the lightest rubber band thing, or TheraBand, or whatever they call them, lightest one. And just pull on that thing 500 times and see how much it weighs. So lighter in paddles is better. As a general rule, most everyone has gone to the Power Surge blade, S-U-R-G-E. If nothing else, if you decide this sport sucks and I don't want anything to do with it, you could probably sell it easier after that, assuming you didn't do it. And they're pretty tough. You can see this one has a chunk missing out of the throat of the paddle right there. I wouldn't want to go like this for days and days, but it's not going to just come apart on you. And the other thing, obviously I have not used that one in the Safari, is if you look, they've all got some kind of marking on them. This is reflective material. So my friend, who I raced with several times, dropped a paddle in the dark, and I said, well, shine your light on it and see if you can't find it. He goes, well, I don't have anything reflective on it. I said, and so we're talking, he said, man, I thought you put that stuff on for decoration. And this was a guy who'd done the Safari 5 times at that point. This one, obviously has a little bit of A&M sticker on it left because you want to be able to know that's your paddle and pick up the right one every time.
These paddles may look slightly different if you've got a straight shaft paddle. These have an offset of 12 to 14 degrees. And it was something that a man named Gene Jensen came up with years ago as a boat designer. He found out that with that slack beam, you get a little bit longer stroke with that bent shaft paddle than you do with a straight shaft. Either one will work. The other thing is some people sometimes go with a medium weight. You can get different weights in these paddles. And the real light ones that weigh like 11 or 9 ounces now, they're pretty fragile. See, some people go with like a medium weight just because you might hit rocks and things and support. So it's up to you.
And we say they're strong for the way they're very strong, but they're not designed to be pushing off stuff. Or I know one guy put it in between 2 roots and then it snapped the end because he's paddling forward. So,
But I'm okay with that because then I get to sell you a new blade and I get to fix the paddle. So, there's advantages to everything.
The other thing is how long should the paddle be? This is, if you buy it from Jay, you buy it from Dwayne, the paddle, they come in 3 parts. So you have the grip, the shaft, and the blade. You can get it where the shaft is not cut and then duct tape the handle in and go paddle and figure out how high you want it. And what you're looking for is when you're in the power phase of the stroke, you want this fist to be about in front of your face. Some people like it a little lower, some people like it a little taller. We don't ever want to be over our heads, and we don't want to be down in our lap because we can't get any power out of it that way. Though I've tried that for a Safari or 2 because it's easier to paddle down here than up here. So what you're looking for is that fist in front of your face. Okay.
For those of you who are going to be going solo or for some reason you're starting off unlimited, you know, double blade paddles have come a long way. My first Safari, the double blade paddle I used weighed 40 ounces. This one weighs 24 and it's adjustable, and it's a wing blade. There's a lot more learning curve with the double paddle. I'm not sure that I've gotten it down yet after all this time. But the same thing, and Epic has kind of become the de facto standard for water safari paddling. Doesn't mean they're not other brands. TG that was here earlier, they are a dealer as well. But the same thing applies. You see it's got reflective tape on both halves of the paddle, because that can happen. If you're storing the paddle, here's what did Andy call everything? It was kind of a trick, a hack. Or use my modern language now. Stick a little piece of that gray foam in the end of it, because guess what? They can fill up and sink, but if you have a little bit of foam plugging it up, doesn't have weight, you have adjustable length. But reflective, mine had gray because I was the old guy on the team. And then that marking is not so that I know which way the paddle goes. That showed me where in the boat that it needed to be stored and in what position. So I don't want to pretend to try to teach you how to paddle, but that's the equipment for paddling.
Any questions on paddles?
I would just add, you might want to write your name and or number on your paddle, because at races, when everyone has the same paddles, you could lose it, or you might forget it because you're like, I'm going to go home and eat. And so they get lost, or if you're on the river, if you dump or something, they can get lost too, and someone happens to find it, they might be able to call you and contact you.
And I found 2 paddles this year on the river.
They're mine.
Can you describe it?
They're black.
So one had their name on it, and we called the guy and was like, hey, did you lose anything? And he's like, yeah. We're like, okay, can you describe what you lost? And it had his name and number on there. The other one, I think one of my team members found a new paddle because we looked, and a lot of racers, I mean, you're dealing with people, but most river people, pretty honest, and they'll return the paddle. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but, if I find a paddle and it's got your name on it, I'm going to try to look you up and give you a paddle.
Which leads us to a very good thing, is that there are Facebook forums that you all can join. ATX paddlers, DTX paddlers, HTX paddlers, Martindale Athletic Club.
What about the Texas Water Safari?
Texas Water Safari.
You can follow the Texas Water Safari. It's not, people don't see your messages on there as often. We see them as administrators, but not the general public. So just FYI, join at least one, so that if you lose something, if people start to see your name, they're going to start to realize who you are if you're a novice and nobody knows you yet.
Let me give you my one caution against the Facebook forums. Maybe not my one caution, because I'm not a fan. However, if you have a question about a safari rule or something to that effect, the place to post it is not on one of those forums. And it's really not on the Water Safari forum. If you have a question, you need to email us, because we're a bunch of old geezers who don't really like technology. Yeah, I didn't intend to include you with that. We have an email address and we answer every question. It may not be the answer you want. And the opinions that you get on these forums are quite frequently wrong. So be careful about that. Unless you heard from Bob or Jerry that was here earlier, or Alan Spells, who's not here today, or Harvey Babb, or Jay Daniel, the odds are it's not the right answer.
We hadn't talked about price, by the way. These are pretty expensive. If you've got just a regular standard straight shaft paddle, mainly aluminum and plastic, these go from about $200 to $375, just depending on double blade what you're getting. So they're a pretty good investment. So that's a good reason for putting their name and phone number.
And Jay did say buy a paddle that you're comfortable spending. I would really advise, if you're doing the water safari, to invest in a carbon paddle. Okay, you get the wooden paddles, great to train in. My first safari, I came here and they said, you got this Emerald paddle. I was like, I don't have $200. I'm in high school. But finally got one, and I never regretted investing in that good paddle. Other thing, personal care. Kaitlin might just walked in. Back here, she's done safari. How many times now?
This year will be 7.
7 safaris, couple records, super knowledgeable and fast and good technique. Blisters on the hands. How many of you have been paddling long enough to get a blister? I know, even some of you at the first year, you come out and paddle and you're like, man, I'm already getting a hot spot. That can be an issue. And we've got all kinds of fun personal care stuff. Main thing, you got blisters on the hands, you got chafing on the backside. So we go to the diaper aisle and we find our favorite kind of ointment. I only brought a couple, Desitin. If you have kids, you might already have some and you can borrow it from your toddler. Vitamin E is a popular one. I don't use vitamin E, but a lot of people do. The triple paste is probably my new favorite one that I've been using, that and the Aquifer. And I'll keep this very handy, probably in my phone. A lot of times I'll have an extra hole right there, and I'll have another one for sunscreen, and keep that nearby. And you don't want to put so much on your hand that the paddle flies out of my hand. Really, by the time I put it on other hot spots of my body, it's just enough for my hands. And you can't really see this, but the guy got blisters on top of blisters on top of blisters on his hands.
Yeah, there's nothing like putting too much lubricant on your hand and then trying to hold on to your paddle. It's like going to the watermelon thump over here and then getting a seed out of a watermelon and trying to hold on to it. It can just squirt. And so you'll cramp your forearms like nothing you've ever seen trying to hold on to that paddle. The one thing I say about vitamin E oil is if you use it, my preference is to get it in the gel capsule, take a little bite and squirt it out, because while it's taking care of those hot spots, it's also a little bit sticky, and so it's not going to give you as much of that trying to slip out of your hand thing.
So, ointment, same thing, chafing. You're sitting in a wet seat for 80 hours, and you're going to be constantly moving the whole time. And if you've seen a baby's bottom with a wet diaper on and rubbing around, it's not a pretty sight, and neither will your backside be a pretty sight. So before the race starts, you'll want to go to the bathroom, and you'll see some people. If you've ever been to the race start, you may start smelling something a little peculiar on them, and you may kind of see them walking, like the gel walk. That's preparing yourself. Same thing for girls. You get your bra straps, you'll put some there. There's also racing glide. You can get in a deodorant stick. It goes back to train with it, practice with it, figure out what works best for you. Whatever, just some of y'all's favorites who've raced.
I like Glide. If you put too much on, man, just like Jay said, you'll be in trouble for a while until you worsen it off. You just have to be careful. It's great.
Aquifer.
Vitamin E.
That body glide is, it's like salty. I feel like it doesn't work well. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I tried it once, so figure out what works for you. And on personal care, Kaitlin, do you want to target female personal care stuff real quick?
Yeah, come on up.
Come on up, so we're live streaming, we have to see you. No pressure.
Yeah, and what did you just say is something you need to hear over and over. Find what works for you, because you just heard several of us talk about the thing that we like the best, and it wasn't the same thing. You'd think it would be one universal. Kaitlin just said she doesn't like body glide. I put that on my armpits to start the race and never have another problem. And on my feet, and that's it. But I don't want to know what they're pulling out of that bag behind me. Just one thing. Same thing with clothing. Seams are your enemy. That's where there's always something on that clothing that's rubbing you. Oh, and just, so, and an old guy trick is turn your shirt inside out. Then the seams are on the other side and the smooth part, because it's not a fashion show. I mean, it's not supposed to be a fashion show. So,
It may with those tights.
Yeah, did you see Libby's tights in that picture?
I don't wear tights. I can't dance.
Because, yeah, so on the shoes and clothing and tights and soccer shorts, find what works for you. Few key things. You want something that's comfortable. You want something without a lot of big seams. You want something that's quick drying. And with your shoes, you want shoes that have good traction and they dry. Yeah, so we've got different, are these your safari shoes?
Yes.
Kristen's, team captain Solomon shoes. Are they a fancy sponsor or something?
No, they're just the ones I like.
Yeah, so I've raced in Keens, I've raced in Solomons, I've raced in Astrals. Find what works for you. Try them out. These, you notice there's a lot of mesh. That's the key thing. Kaitlin, what's your favorite shoe?
Carol.
Merrill shoes. Find what works for you. Clothes. You do see us wearing goofy tights, and then you have soccer shorts over them. Sometimes people wear the soccer shorts over them because we are twisting a lot in our seat, and that helps with the friction. A lot of us girls may cut a slit in our tights so it's easier to pee modestly, and so we wear shorts just for that purpose too. We also, clothing, long sleeves, short sleeves, sleeveless. You're in the sun a long time, so long sleeves is recommended. I've done several safaris in just shorts and short sleeves. Not so much anymore that I'm getting older. I wear a big hat and I wear the long sleeves and long pants. Find what works for you.
And make sure you separate your safari clothes from your other clothes for during the year. You know, Holly mentioned the modesty split for the ladies. You know, one of my friends who lives in Austin she told me this was all going great until I was out gardening one day, and then I realized that I had put on my safari tights to do my gardening. So let that be a lesson to you.
I know some people wear them just for the safari and then they throw them away because they smell so bad. I've learned if you finish the safari, when you take your shower, you shower with your clothes on, and then you take your clothes off and shower, and then you go wash your clothes 3 times by themselves, and then you hang them on the clothesline for a week in the sun, and then you wash them again, and then they don't smell. That's
You always still have the faint smell of it. It's like, oh.
and the sun is a week. So. Okay, a lot of times we use terms that I have discovered when you first start, you don't know. We refer to log jam, we refer to sweepers. Log jams versus trees blocking the river. What's the difference? Does it really matter? In safari terms, log jam looks something like it's hard to see on the screen, but it's not just a tree down across the river. Technically, yes, that is a log jam, but in safari terms, a log jam would be something as long as this room or longer blocking the entire river. People ask, how many can I expect to see? Your guess is as good as mine. It depends on the rain. It depends on if GBRA is going to go a clear amount. It could be anywhere from 0 to 10 or 20. You know, it changes every year. But you see wildlife? I wish I could see that. It's a bunch of alligators swimming around next to a kayak. How many of you have been paddling with alligators? Yeah. I was paddling once in the safari, and it was the 3rd night, and we couldn't stay awake, and I said a little prayer that my partner would wake up, and man, here to this, all of a sudden, a big old alligator surfaces, and we screamed, the alligator flips his tail, we're wet, we're wide awake, we all go on our way. So, you may see an alligator, you may not. Or alligator gar, the big fish. Mayflies, that's probably the wildlife you'll see the most of. And if you're not familiar with those, it's a little fly that comes out right when the sun is starting to set, right before it comes up. A lot of folks wear bug nets because they will be in your hair, in your nose, in your ears, in your shirt, everywhere. If I'm in the front of the boat, I normally bring a bandana, and I look like a cowboy, riding through the dust field. And I have started wearing clear glasses because I had an ion collision with a mayfly. And the first night, I'm going this way, it's going that way, right in my eye. And by the time I got to sea drift, my eye was it looked like a puppy, like goop, red, really nasty. I I know other folks have had stuff. I think, didn't Morgan have that the year y'all races together? So clear glasses, maybe a good thing to have. Anything to add on wildlife or?
Just like the bars, like your lights at night, so that's a lot of times when you'll see the bars.
Oh, I have one, Holly. Watch out for snakes and trees, especially with the water low and you have to go close to sweepers and stuff. I've had that several times where they're just hanging out there, you don't see them to the last minute, so.
Yeah, snakes, and also on the portaging, when you're carrying your boats around the log jams, look for snakes.
Yeah.
You leave them alone, they're gonna leave you alone. And then
No.
speaking of paddling at night with snakes, you wanna talk about lights?
Yeah. I have my lights here, somewhere. You know, I've been doing this a while, so I've got some, LED lights that are pretty darn bright, I could probably put these on my truck and see, okay. For you, starting out, I will make one recommendation. You go over to Apple Hardware, buy yourself a 3-cell mag light with an LED bulb in it. More than likely, those 3 batteries will last you the entire safari. Take a backup set just in case. But you're not going to be going fast enough at this point that you need to worry about more and more light. You might get 2. I mean, they make the really nifty little clamps that you can screw to the deck of your boat. Or you could go back to our ubiquitous gray foam, mini cell foam, and you could have it where it velcros onto the deck of the boat. If it gets knocked off, guess what happens? It's going to float because it's in that gray foam. But you don't need to start out with anything fancier than those LED mag lights. And they're almost infinitely adjustable. They're waterproof, a little bit heavier than what this is, but it's also, several orders of magnitude more affordable. Especially if you're just trying, and not only that, if you decide, I don't want to do the water safari ever again, what did you do but end up with a couple of good flashlights to hang out around the house? So that's my advice about lights. You don't have to put a switch or anything on mag lights. I mean, there are entire internet forums dedicated to modifying flashlights and making flashlights. I mean, it's a hobby. You could machine it down and have remote batteries, but I'm telling you, for your first rattle out of the box, 3-cell mag light, or you could become a law enforcement officer and use it for a baton. I mean, you have plenty of opportunity to use that mag light over and over. That's what I would do. And got to switch on.
And I would recommend having a headlight as well. And the mag light that you mentioned, have it mounted. Because man, if it's on your headlight, the guy behind you gets seasick and your hand comes across and blinds his face. Yeah.
And the only person I've ever known that was successful using a headlight for the entire race is Peter Derrick. And, he's from the UK, so he ain't really from around here. That being said, he's got about 20 safari finishes and has finished first in the solo division quite a few times. But he even has these funky little black gloves he wears because of that flash of light going across his face.
Yeah. So the other thing, and this is a very broad question, is what gear should I bring? Because you can be given food, you can be given prescription medicine, so what else should you bring? I'm not going to go through my entire list. Just a few things that hopefully maybe you thought about, maybe you haven't. Of course, everything on the mandatory list you have to bring. Bring a spare paddle. Hopefully it's a nice paddle, but if your budget doesn't fit that, just bring one from Academy, get one of the wooden vent shafts, bring a spare paddle. Also, your team captain's phone number. And maybe you're saying, well, it's in my phone. I don't need it. But your phone may be dead, and you get to a checkpoint, and your team captain's not there, and you have 5 other team captains, like, well, who's your team captain? And you describe what he looks like. Well, can I call him? I don't know his phone number. So I've started with the duct tape On the inside of my boat, I write my team captain's number, nice, big and bold, so I can see it in a case of an emergency, my phone doesn't work, just keep that handy. So your team captain's phone number, a space blanket is another big one. Those, I didn't bring, do you have one? You get them from Academy, they weigh like 2 ounces, they feel like aluminum foil. Super handy when you go to sleep. I didn't bring a picture, but I had to use it as a spray skirt one year because we forgot ours and I duct taped it on. But really good to stay warm when you sleep. Lots of multi-purpose there. Also tweezers, probably in your medical kit, but you're probably going to get a splinter at some point, whether from your carbon boat or from the twig hanging down. And then different ointments we talked about.
I was thinking about the mesquite tree right as you come into the lake above Staples. I managed to hit that about once a year.
Yep. It's gone now.
Is it?
Well, you're talking about the one little, yeah, I used to run it every single time. And so we did some trimming. And another thing, and this is, I just added in because I like having mints with me, breath mints. Peppermint's a natural way to stay awake. And when you're getting an upset belly, peppermint helps with that. It also makes your breath fresh.
Not spizzy.
Yeah, that's just like no charge on that. Any questions about gear? We could spend 2 hours on this. I just kind of went through it real fast.
Bring something for a raincoat. I mean, I don't know how long this has been
Probably
smashed down in the what do you call it? Sealing meal bag. But this has done several safaris. You know, now this is kind of weighty. You know, the other thing to do is bring some trash bags, some heavy duty trash bags, because they're pretty universal, man. You can poke a hole where your head goes and your arms out, and you will sweat in it because it doesn't breathe, but it'll keep you dry. And it just seems like every few years we get a pretty good thunderstorm during the middle of the race.
we probably do one. We had one last year. But back in the day, everybody had a Silamil. A lot of times we'll package our food like that, or your spray skirt, or my repair kit, which Jay will talk about that in a little bit. If you have a buddy who has one, they're more reliable, they compact everything tighter than Ziploc bags, much more durable. So Silamil is super important things. The other question I get is, what is the best life jacket? Get one that's Coast Guard approved, go and try them on and paddle, try them out. Personal preference. Quick, easy answer on that. Did we have a question on that?
We covered that.
Oh, you did?
This morning, yeah.
Okay.
We did some
Did you go through boats, broken boats and repairs? People ask me, how many boats really break? You can't see these pictures, but maybe a little bit. That one's like tacoed in half, and then this other one's in the back of a pickup truck, and it's like this. It's on aluminum. So boats do break, and you want to have a repair kit, which Jay is going to talk about that when he gets back in a minute. You want to be able to prepare. I think my dog is looking for.
I got it squared away.
All right. You want to talk about repair kits and broken boats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not as complicated as you think if you're prepared. The quick list is zip ties, 5-minute epoxy, a little piece of sandpaper, little piece of fiberglass cloth, Gorilla Tape, and Flex Tape. I'm here to tell you, I mean, I would guarantee you, yeah, matches and lighter fluid. So I'm here to tell you that in about 5 minutes at Lowe's yesterday, I got what I needed to fix a boat. I really thought the Flex Tape and all that stuff was one of those infomercial things that was a bunch of baloney. I'm here to tell you, Kristen and I did a Pecos River trip a few months ago, and probably less than 2 miles in, I bashed it right into a rock and split the very nose of the boat open. And so pulled the boat over to the side, dried it out. I put a piece of Flex Tape to seal the hole from the inside. I used a significant amount of Gorilla Tape to seal it from the outside, then covered that with Flex Tape because The flex tape has more adhesion. And other than continue to put flex tape over the nose because it would get abraded, the boat never leaked after that. How many of you are planning to use an aluminum boat? Okay. Then you probably only need flex tape and duct tape. But the thing that happens the most with aluminum boats is they get a rivet ripped off. And if you've ever had a rivet ripped off of an aluminum boat, especially if you can see it, it is the, by God, most annoying thing on the planet, because it's like having this cute little fountain right in the middle of your boat, squirting up like that. This happens to be J.B. Weld steel stick. You probably hear it referred to. There are other brands, plumber's putty, because it'll dry underwater. If you rip a rivet off, man, just roll that up till it gets all mixed together, cram it up in that rivet hole. I would probably cover it with a piece of tape just to keep it protected for a little bit. And it will probably be harder to remove than an actual rivet. These two tapes, I'm not normally very brand conscious, if you would, but the adhesive that they both use is such that when I go to repair a boat after this stuff has been on it, I probably spend as much time grinding the adhesive off as I actually do with the boat repair. I mean, this stuff sticks. Now, they all mention, tell them about lighter fluid and matches in lighter fluid. The boat is wet when this happens, obviously. So how do you dry it off quickly? Those of you who are old enough to remember the band Kiss, when Gene Simmons would come out and he would spit fire, and that was because he either had tequila in his mouth or lighter fluid. And we all played this trick at least once in junior high, those of you who are old enough to remember when they were height of their fame. And so it's the same thing. It's not actually, did you try this recently? I mean, I see some laughter back there. Or is it just a good reason to take tequila with you? I mean, it's one of the two things. But what happens is it generates a lot of heat on the surface without actually burning what it's on. Just like if there's gasoline on the floor, somebody lit a match, it's going to burn that, heat it up. So you light that lighter fluid. If you go online, you can find some pretty cool pictures of people in the safari lighting their boats on fire. And it's not that they're performing some kind of sacrifice to the hallucination alley gods, it's that they're drying out the boat for that purpose. Now, every once in a blue moon, it gets in a crevice or something, and it wants to keep burning it, but it's heated up. Plus, it's warm enough that you can stick it. It helps the adhesive, like it already needs help, to really get a grip on it. If you're prepared enough, you can always get through the race. In the 2000 race, I tell this story almost every year. In the 2000 race, Don Zeke and his daughter Brandy Zeke were racing, and he had been over at the house quite a bit. And we'd been through the what do I need in my repair kit story over and over. And I said, zip ties. Now, when I say zip ties, I usually mean take 10 or 12 zip ties with you. Well, Don is an accomplished engineer. And so when he heard zip ties, what he brought was like if you go to one of the warehouse stores and buy zip ties, it was like a quart of zip ties kind of thing. And he took them with him. Now in the 2000 race, it was very unique because what happened is as we got to check in a dry year, kind of like what we're experiencing now, it started raining. And it rained all day at check-in. And it rained all day of Saturday of the race, so that the race, if you were up towards the front of the pack, was not the race that was happening at the back of the pack because the water was coming up and just weird things were happening. So when Don and Brandy got somewhere down below Palmetto, they were on what was essentially a floating log jam. And a log came over and hit the stern of their boat and ripped like 2 feet of the boat off, except for about 4 inches at the very bottom of the boat. Now, it continued to rain. Now, I told Don about lighter fluid, and I told him about Gorilla Tape and, about zip ties and everything. And he brought the quart of zip ties, but what he forgot was the lighter fluid and the matches. But he's a very persistent man. It quit raining, but what happens after it quits raining out there? Everything sweats, right? I mean, it condenses on it. You can't get it dry. And so he looked at it. He said, okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do something to attach the gunnel. So he found a pretty stout stick, poked holes in, and zip tied the gunnels in. And then he took and he poked holes all through it and zip tied it all back together. I repaired the boat later, so I'm telling you, he zip tied that whole thing back together. It looked like Frankenstein's monster. But that's not going to hold water, right? So he very persistently, Brandy would tear off a little piece of tape, and he would rub it with his fingers until it got warmed up enough that it wouldn't sweat or condense on there, and he'd stick a little piece of tape on it. And I don't know how many hours it took him to do this, but he was persistent enough that he put that thing back together because he took most of the right supplies. There's a set of brothers named Markowski. I just got through repairing their boat from 2 safaris ago. Turned over, blew the bottom of the boat open. I mean, it's all hanging together. And I mean, they must have gone to the like sail on flex tape, because it was zip tied, glued, all these things back together, and they finished the race. So the point being, if you're prepared, it's pretty much a generally accepted thing that you can get it fixed. Where are you at? Jump the gun. Yes.
Oh, do you need a spray cover? These guys are out there surfing, so the answer is maybe. Last year, we had a beautiful glass bay for 95% of the race, and we didn't need a spray skirt, but you may not. And that's what, I've got one out there, that's what they look like. And then people always ask, why do we do this race? And I think Jay already touched on that. We love the river, and we make a lot of friends through the race. So.
I just want to hit a couple of quick things, and then I'm going to turn this over to Virginia and Kaitlin. Rigging questions. Try to keep everything the same. Here I've got a pile of rivets. They're all different, but they're all the same. The difference is the length of what they will rivet together. They are all 3/16 rivets, and they're all broadhead rivets. The other thing is screws. Same thing. These are all 1024 stainless screws. Do you know what they have in common? These rivets and these screws?
Same drill bit. Same drill bit.
That's right. Same drill bit takes care of all of them. So if you manage to shear a rivet off and you've got your Leatherman tool, your probably a screw that's too long for anything in the boat and a wing nut, guess what? You can tie it back together. But if you've got, Winona, uses 832 screws for all of their stuff. So if you've got a boat that's got 832 screws in it, and, 3/16 rivets and all these things, stuff doesn't match. So, it's my general rule, if I repair a boat, it goes back with whatever it has in it. But if I'm rigging a boat for someone, everything is common, a common whole on stuff. And the other thing is, what do I use for a bilge pump? There are other bilge pumps out there that, this one's never been pulled out for a demonstration. This is a Dayton 1P811A. It's on the sheet that I gave you. There is nothing, there are pumps that put out a lot more water. I mean, a lot more water. But other than these things that have been modified, I've never found a pump that works better. And back to quoting my friend Andy's word, I'll give you a quick hack. Unscrew this and pull this off of here. Take some spacers. Guess what diameter these are? 10/32. They're self-threading, so that's not a fair question. But if you take your spacers that you use for a rivet backup nut and you screw those in, and then you stand that off the bottom of the boat, you have almost the perfect volume of what that pump will pull out. And I would suggest you find a way to screen it just so it doesn't suck debris up, because they can manage to pull that out. But this is the way to go. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if it's the fastest boat out there or the slowest boat out there. This is the pump I would use. And I think that's all of the random rigging stuff that I've got. So next, I want to turn you over to Kaitlin and for Virginia.
Does that run off like on a motorcycle battery?
What I generally do, and I think most people have gotten the point they're doing is it's a 10 AA holder, pack of 10 AA batteries. And so it's overdriving it because each of those batteries is 1.5 volts. So and I think the technical design on these is like 13.2. So if you're running at 15, it's spinning a little bit faster. But I've never run one of those battery packs out during a race. But I always take a backup anyway, because if I don't, then I'll need it. That answers your question?
Yeah.
So, and I know there's different opinions, but basically the Duracell, which one? The blue
Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
Energizer lithium batteries. They're not the cheapest thing on the planet, but by golly, they will continue to work. So now, I want to turn you over to Virginia and Kaitlin. Kaitlin, as she mentioned, has finished 7 water safaris. Virginia has finished 8 water safaris. Together, they are one half of the team that owns the women's overall record with a time of 36 hours and something. I can't remember, although I was there. I take care of the split. Let's have some time off there for you. Which is interesting because the record that they broke was Virginia and Kaitlin together. And Virginia also currently holds the women's overall solo record. So they know that of which they speak. So take it away, ladies.
To get started, I'll go ahead and just start with our little plug for our own little races. It kind of piggybacks nicely off of what Holly's been saying. What I mostly took from what Holly said, just about every slide she had, it was figure out what works for you, try multiple different things, and race how you train. So the best way to do that is by making friends. You don't really want to go out and buy 6 life jackets, spend a couple $100s, and figure out which one you like. A few years ago, Virginia and I, along with both of our husbands, started doing a little race series. It's not directly affiliated with the TWS, but we post them along the race course. So the best way to see all these different products, look at people's different boats, is to get out with the people who you're going to be racing with. I highly encourage you to, we put them on, you're going to see us there. Come to all of our little races. They're cheap, they're fun. The last one is very fun. We have a little flyer for you, just so you can remember the dates. In my opinion, that is the best way to be as prepared as you can possibly be to race in June. Come out. Safari people are kind of unique people in the fact that they're kind of reserved, but if you start talking to them about paddling. They're the most chatty people in the world. They'll talk to you until you just want to die. So just start showing up to stuff. You can go and look at the fastest guy in the Safari's boat and just say, hey man, what is that? Why do you rig this like that? What is this? What component is this? And they'll tell you all about it. And that is so much more valuable than just getting out with your teammate every weekend, trying to figure it out on your own. Just show up, talk to people. We love engaging with people in the community, and you'll figure it out a lot faster. That being said...
What are those series of races, David?
Okay. Well, I'm going to pass out my little flyer, but I will tell you about it anyways. We do have a little Facebook page, Martindale Athletic Club. On March 22nd, we're going to be doing City Park to Staples. The first 3 are all 10 a.m. starts. March 29th will be Staples to Luling. April 5th will be Luling 90 to Palmetto. And April 18th is definitely our best event. We call it the night race. It is from Palmetto to Gonzales. I don't know why I had to look at that. And it starts at 7:30 at night. We have a really fun fish fry at the gravel bar at 183 afterwards.
It's like at 1 a.m.
Yeah, there's pretty much nothing funner than eating fried fish by the river on a gravel bar in the middle of the night where you'll be sleeping in a couple months. So Dave's gonna pass these all
I'll
out.
stick them on the back table with the other handouts so that it doesn't distract.
But yeah.
You want to do this. I mean, iron sharpens iron. You know, racing makes you faster than just getting out there and slogging miles out. You need to do both.
Yeah, I certainly encourage that. The first 3 races are all on a Sunday. The intention of that is so that you get out on Saturday and see that course. So figure out what you're going to do on Saturday so that you can race it on Sunday. Racing means a lot of different things to different people. It's not trying to say that you need to go out and race till you throw up or pull a muscle or twist an ankle on a portage, but you should be efficient and trying to do that race, even though it's kind of informal and fun, how you intend to be in June. I think it's kind of our mindset that this is a race. A lot of people look at it as more of an adventure, but we are trying to get down as fast as we can, and that's the intention with our series, is to get you down as fast as you can. So please come. Additionally, tomorrow is the Town Lake race, and there's another race next Sunday. Those are also very fun, even though they're not on the course. They're just on a lake, but it's meeting people, it's getting to hang out with, say you want to come back next year, you're going to be hanging out with us all year long, see each other every weekend. So start meeting the people who are probably going to be some of your very good friends.
And the Town Lake series is in Austin. It's at Fiesta Shores.
Fiesta Gardens.
Fiesta Gardens. And that's where I-35 hits Lady Bird Lake is what we now call it, in Austin. So
10 a.m.
10 a.m. And what day did you say that was?
Tomorrow? So there's
And
one
next
tomorrow, and then February 16th.
Yeah, the following Sunday as
On
well.
February 16th, we'll also really try to get our kids and have all the kids we can. So if you got kids, bring them out. We'll even have some extra boats, and we'll have a little work for them, of course, but in the middle afterwards as well.
It's shorter. It's a 6-mile course. Typically takes about hour to an hour and a half. And then the kids' course is before the 6-mile course next weekend. So lots of fun practicing. And I'm sure they've said this a million times, but the more people you can train with, even if it's not a Martindale Athletic Club race or a Town Lake race, find shuttles and groups to go paddle with on the Martindale Athletic Club Facebook page or the ATX Paddlers Facebook page. Have you already said that?
Just briefly.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. So now I get to talk about the really fun thing, which is talking to a bunch of dudes about tampons. Are you all ready? There's a lot of things. This man was our team captain last
brave. So let's just start off there. In all seriousness, do we, yeah, men, close your eyes, because you're too happy. So basically, we do have to, I joke with that intro, but I do feel like my husband's and probably Kaitlin's husband come into this race with a little bit different mentality. We women typically like to know every branch on the course because we know that if we get in a precarious situation, we don't have the strength to get out of that precarious situation. So as a female racing, there's, I feel like, quite a bit more prep involved. And so I would just urge everyone to train like that. Try and see as much as you can before the race because it is very helpful. And then I always get the question, how do you pee in the boat? Well, we typically, for a female, have a female. Did you bring one? Have you already talked about it?
No. Photo op, okay. It's going to look better than the ones at Jay's today, so it's good.
Friends that are men that can't pee in the boat, okay? What doesn't help your partner, if your partner can't pee in the boat, yelling at them what's taking you so long is like the least helpful thing. Just for those of you that are ever anywhere, anytime. Again, we have our
That might help for a guy.
then you too can use this urinal if you need
So,
to.
I normally race with women, but last year I raced with some dudes, and they were like, we're dudes, and Jay can talk about how dudes pee, but they had issues like screaming over the edge of the boat, and they're like, Holly, can I use your urinal? And I'm like, dude, like, not the girl, it's fine. So like, we ended up peeing in a cup because it was easier. We ended up having like an old water bottle. So I think, not a guy, but it may be easier for guys too.
You know, there's a lot of pride in saying, oh, I'm just going to pee up over the side of the boat. And there's, I'm here to tell you in about 24 hours, I don't care how young you are, you know, peeing over the side of the boat means you're going to dribble down your leg. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so you need to do something. I mean, there's guys that pee on paddles, you know, and you know, use that to direct what's left of the flow out. I mean, you don't want it all over you. I mean,
You don't want it in the boat.
and you don't want it in the boat. And
That's ew.
so you do whatever you can to get us, you know. So,
You know,
It's a lot harder than I think.
you shouldn't feel bad about it if you can't relax, because one of the best paddlers that I've paddled with in a minor boat, he could not pee in the boat. We had to make him get out 118 miles on the race and make him get out and pee. He's in a tight place back there and just can't relax, so it's different for everybody.
yeah, if you're driving an unlimited boat, just about the time, that probably happens for everybody, just about the time you're about relaxed enough where you can pee is about the time somebody screams, right! It's like taking a clamp, you know, on your bladder. So, you know,
This is very true. That is definitely going to happen to you. So just prep for that.
Practice it.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Don't wait until May in the prelim to use the lovely urinal, male or female. Just start early. I will tell you these things, if you flip, which you will, then this can get a lot of water out while your pumps are also going. So we had 4 ladies last year. It was the first time I've ever flipped in a race, but it happened last year, and we had all 4 of our pee jugs helping us empty the boat faster. So these things are multifaceted.
And how did you make sure you didn't lose your?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, okay. So I'll tell you from experience. You want to tie this to a string and then put the string tied, like attach it behind your seat. But notice, you're going to key into it like this. Don't put the hole with your string on the bottom because then you're for sure going to dribble down your leg, like Jay was talking about. You want to put the string at the top. So where you place the string is very important.
You can get those on Amazon if y'all didn't put that on the sheet just by searching feet.
Walgreens.
Yeah.
So something else for I tie it here, and then I just put a piece of duct tape there too. Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Now, Virginia's so prepared that what she hasn't told you is after they use this, she makes sure that they have the appropriate quantity of feed.
Yeah.
And then she screams at Kaitlin.
Clear and copious.
That's not enough!
Okay, I was 100% about to go into that. Y'all need to know. So, have y'all talked about peeing too much or peeing not enough?
No.
Okay, this is kind of a safety issue. So, y'all have heard of, everyone's told you need to have your nutrition down. You've got to have enough salt in your body. You have to have enough liquids. Well, a good way to gauge how you're doing physically is how much you're peeing. If you have not peed in 12 hours, you are probably dehydrated. And if you are peeing every 30 minutes, you probably are overhydrated and you need more salt. So my rule of thumb is if I'm peeing more than once an hour, I probably need to eat some super salty chips or some ramen. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but ramen is legit. And then if I am not peeing enough, then clearly I need to drink more water. So, yeah, the color, if it's neon yellow, then probably you need to drink more water as well. So that is a very real thing to be paying attention to.
Do you want to try to
Don't dare.
Okay, so any questions about peeing in the boat or what color your pee should be?
and let's stop for a second. I know we make a lot of jokes about it, but what she just said, if you're peeing more than every hour, odds are you've gotten to a point where you're dumping salt and you're dumping electrolytes, and you need to stop and do whatever it takes to get them. And I think if you're not peeing every 2 hours, then you're probably to the point where you're going to start getting dehydrated. It's, this race is the second Saturday in June. I've done the race when it was 118 degrees. I'm not making this up. And so, while it's something to be funny about because, everybody wants to talk about how do you go to the bathroom in the boat, the fact is, it's a very effective gauge of what your body is doing. So pay attention to that.
And team captains, y'all pay attention to your racers because if they are, at every checkpoint, it's not that they need to empty their water bottle, but they need to be getting after their water. So you can kind of key into them a little bit as well and ask them the question like, how's your pee? Are you peeing? Holly had a baby the first year that I did the race, and so she was sitting that year out, and I remember seeing her probably around Cuero, and I just was a little bit loopy, and she said, you need to eat more salt, like eat salt now, because she could just tell that I was losing it. So nutrition helps your brain as much as sleep does. So that is something to definitely pay attention to.
So as a team captain, when you are doing handoffs and you're swapping out jugs, if you're pulling full jugs out of the boat, something's going on.
Once is probably okay.
Once, but if it's a continuous thing, it may come down, and also as you're doing handoffs, if you're not getting trash out of the boat, like empty food packages or whatever, then that also means that they're not eating, or pulling out full bags of food.
Or they turned over most there.
Well, yeah, or if they turn over, then that's different, but you need to be gauging what's coming back out of the boat. And if they're starting to get loopy, don't let them leave that checkpoint until you see them eat or drink. Because you need to gauge their health. And, I've done that different times, like, no, I need to see you drink this, I need to see you eat this before I'm gonna let you go on.
So
There's another biological imperative that often insists that it be addressed, and it might involve poison ivy. I think. And I wonder if there's a
It has
relationship.
involved with ivy before.
Yeah, what's that?
So if you have to go poop, then you can pull over and do what you need to do. If you want to bring some toilet paper and dry seal it, just don't leave it on the bank.
So dog wag bags, little plastic ones, as female, a lot of times you have other trash that has to go out. Throw it in there, tie it, put it in a Ziploc bag. Kristen, this is for you. I give it to her directly. She knows exactly what it is. She's gonna dispose of it properly. So you're staying, we're not leaving trash. We're staying clean, staying sterile, staying discreet. So.
Now, most of you are probably not going to be racing at that point where you're worried about, do I hang my butt over the side of the boat? Or you could say, beat the guy in the third seat of my boat. And you think, oh, I'm going to use this Ziploc bag. Mr. Curry, I'm going to troll Jay while he's on the Facebook page. And instead, you missed the bag. And the first thing that you hear from the back of the boat is, get that out of the boat. And so instead of thinking, oh, I've got a Ziploc bag that I could pick it up with, you reach down and you grab a warm handful of it. So, plan ahead. Don't be like him.
Okay, while we're talking about Tim Curry, for those of you that have not met Tim, he's not shy and he likes to talk, okay? So one of my proudest moments in 8 years of safari is when I was solo and Tim had a partner, Zach Peltier, one of the nicest humans on earth, and we were kind of leapfrogging throughout the day, and I just kind of quit paddling, and Tim and Zach were like, yes, we're gonna get her. So they pull up and they're like, why aren't you paddling? And I'm like, I'm changing my tampon. And Tim didn't speak because he was so mortified. So that was one of my more proud moments. So women, you can still beat them even if that is something you're dealing with. And also, your body is working so hard that after 24 hours, probably it won't be an issue anymore. So, yes.
I know we talked about like you can't go to the trucks and you can't use cots and stuff, but at the checkpoints where there are porta-johns, is that legal to use those?
Yes. If it's supplied,
If
if it's there for everyone to use, then yes. If your team captain somehow creates a bathroom for you, then no, that is not legal. But there are porta potties at every single checkpoint.
Yeah. I'd rather use a Ziploc bag than one.
Yeah. I guess one of the favorite things I would talk about is your bra. Your bra straps are gonna be more detrimental to you than your butt's gonna be by the end. Your bra is your worst enemy. You might take it off. It's awful. Really keep that thing greased up. It's not fun. So on that note, I have found like we say it's so hot, middle of June. Stay hydrated, stay cool. But I have noticed, like, if you get wet and you jump in the river around San Marcos, there's not a lot of particles in that water. But if you get wet around DuPont and you get in that water and you've got all this sandy, like, it's thicker water. So you're gonna get that, male or female, underneath whatever clothing you're wearing, and that is going to rub you more. You're gonna have more blisters. So just keep that in mind. The cleaner you stay, if you're portaging, I just did it's why I walked in right at 2 o'clock. I just did Ventress to Luling 90, and we got out like 10 times. So keep yourself as clean as possible because that sand can really create some problems. If you get sand on your hands, that's like the fastest way to get a big old blister. So keep your hands clean, keep them greased up. Have y'all talked about vitamin E? So,
Yeah, friction is your enemy.
yeah.
Do you have a particular brand of the sports bra and thing that you found?
I like Patagonia.
We wear the
And we're not running, so, I'll get mine a sidewalk too. pile then. Thanks, Lori.
It's not as exciting as it sounds, guys. I mean, I was the team captain for 4 hot girls, and there was nothing exciting about bras and tampons and all that kind of stuff.
So there is a product, and this is helpful for everybody. It's called Leukotape. It's basically, if you picture your traditional Band-Aid, the ends of it, that brown stretchy stuff that's sticky, that is Leukotape, essentially. And you can, say you have a line that's gonna rub and you can, at Spring Lake, before you ever get in the water, line whatever you think is gonna rub with Leukotape, and then take it off after you finish the race. And that does I tend to put Leukotape right here, because that's where I get rubbed, on my collarbones. So that's a neat product that I just learned about within the past couple years. So that's a good one.
That's cool. I never heard of that.
It's real.
Well, I never had a bra either.
L-E-U-K-O.
Hard to find in the store, but it's on Amazon.
Yes. Yeah. Everything that we're telling y'all about.
What about liquid Band-Aid? We use that bait fishing a lot. Like
Yeah.
rub spots and stuff.
That probably work.
Pile that on there like very good.
I do have a friend that had a bunch of blisters on his hand, and so he duct taped his hand around Cuero. I wouldn't recommend that, because you're gonna have to get that tape off at some point, which is not gonna be fun.
Take all your skin with it.
Yeah, Jerry Cochran that was here earlier, this was a long time ago, but he was a carpenter for the state, and they decided that they would wear gloves in the safari, and they were whatever the highest tech at that time was, gloves that there were, and they wore these. In essence, when they took the gloves off, they took all the skin along with it. You don't want to stay wet. Drying off is the bottom line of everything they're telling you. How do you get it dried off?
One thing is like at night, if you take your shoes off or like let your feet dry out, or shirts or anything, make sure you secure those in the boat. I was team captain for the Cowboys one year, and a bunch of them had taken shoes and clothes off, and they hit something in the middle of the night, flipped over. They lost everything, and some of them didn't have their stuff tied in. Never happened.
I would say tie everything in. If you are gonna need it in 50 miles, tie it in. Somehow secure it. I'm sure y'all have talked about that extensively.
Virgin, I know you touched on it, but I want you to go into a little more detail, because you do better than anyone I know about what parts of the river to scout and what to scout. No, I didn't say that. I may have implied it. No, it's true though. Because she touched on it very briefly, but it's that thing of, most of us are like, oh, I remember that. And you take it from there.
Okay, so I'm sure that Holly talked to you guys about if you're brand new to paddling and this is like a bucket list item for you, you're probably not going to start on the most technical sections of the river. So you'll probably start on a lake, learn how the canoe works, and then move up from there. Once you get comfortable in your boat, I would say the number one places that we think are imperative to learn pretty intimately would be, unfortunately, San Marcos to Palmetto, really San Marcos to Gonzales, so the first 80 miles. Sorry, it's true though. And I can be really specific about those 80 miles. And then the next major stretch is Cuero to Victoria, which is the prelim course. See the prelim before you do the prelim. That's all I'm going to say. Especially in low water like we have right now. All the reports I'm seeing show no rain in the spring. So it's possibly going to be a really low water year. There are more rocks, more stumps, showing more things to break your boat on. And then after that, you've got the log jam section, which is after DuPont. and then you have the bay. If you've never seen the bay, you really don't want to leave that to the last minute. It can get kind of ugly, and you want to at least feel confident that you know where you're going down there, because you're going to be the least clear when you're crossing the bay. Okay. So let me get specific, because you can do Puerto Victoria in a day, you can do the bay in a day, and you can see the log jams in a day. You're probably not going to do start to Palmetto. So the rockiest section in that stretch is from the start to Staples. So I wouldn't make that your first run out of the gate. That is less forgiving as far as, day trips. From Staples to Fentress right now, I don't think is that bad right now. But Fentress to Luling 90 is really hairy. And
Stairtown's at 90.
yeah, Stairtown to 90. The good news is it's shallow. So if you see stuff up ahead and you don't know if you're going to be able to make it through there, then you can pull over and walk a lot of this stuff. Just if you see trees across the river, my big thing is, especially we had a lot of wind the other day, you don't know what trees that's blown into the river. Stay on the low side of the river. Did y'all talk about that? Okay, so what I mean is, if you're going down the river and you've got a really high bank and you've got a shallow gravel bar and the river's kind of turning to your left, you want to hug that gravel bar, because more than likely the faster water is going to be on the outside along that really steep bank. So when you haven't seen a stretch, just play it safe. Don't get in the fastest water unless you can see, quite a ways down the river, because you don't want to get in a situation that you can't get out of. And that's where I think that we're particularly cautious and on point with that regard.
To piggyback on that, real, practice getting out of your boat in shallow water. Because when you're coming up on something at this water level, I paddled the Pinterest to Luling with some other guys, and we did fine, but it's gnarly. And most of the time, it's not even knee deep. And as soon as the water starts taking you, if you don't jump out right then, you're going to end up in that tree, and you're going to end up poking a hole in your boat or breaking your leg. So in a controlled environment, practice getting out of your boat quickly and on the upstream side of the boat. That's a real safety thing. So if the river's going this way, I'm going to let the boat go and get out, and the boat's going downstream and I'm on the upstream side. Also, I never want to get out and hold my boat in the middle of the boat with it sideways to the current, because then I'm fighting all that. So this is something you need to practice.
What she means by that is, if you've got, most of y'all will probably have two people in your boat. The back person needs to secure the back of the boat. As long as the back person is solid, then that nose can kind of move a little bit. But if the front person is holding the boat and you're kind of on a turn, that water is going to grab the back of the boat and slam it into whatever is downstream. So it's really important, if ever you have a yard sale and you flipped and everything's going everywhere, whoever's at the back of the boat, try and grab the back of the boat, see if you can stand up. If you can't, just make sure that you don't get between any logs that are down and your boat. We want to be on the other side of your boat so that you don't get pinned.
Main thing is be talking to your partner. As long as the stern person jumps out, the boat will find the current and just be parallel with it. So you can hold it with one hand, but if they try to do it in the front, it's going to come around and take them out. So the back person needs to jump out first.
Yeah, and I think all of them have said, jump out before you get yourself in a precarious position. Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's no bonus points for, taking the crazy way through something, you can always walk your boat past the obstacle and get back in. If you don't do that, and you're that bow person who's decided I'm going to keep holding on to it, and the boat comes swinging around, gets filled up with water, breaks, and now you've got to go back to what I was talking to you about patching it. That's a lot longer than what it would have taken you to hop out of the boat. So just bear that in mind. Safety first.
We use an app called Find My Friends. If y'all haven't heard of this app, it's really accurate as to where you are on the river. So link up with somebody that's on land, even if they're in Houston, so that they can know where you are, so that if something happens to your boat and you need someone to come and help you, then you'll be able to send them a pin. Get a really good dry bag if you don't already have one, and make sure your phone is charged, because it's just a really easy, I can't tell you how many times we've all gone to help someone that's just broken the boat, or maybe they just have a hole and they need some duct tape or whatever, and so location is key.
And bring your repair kit on training runs. Even if you're like, oh, I'm just going for 5-10 miles. We had some friends the other day go out and they call me and they're like, the boat's kind of in 2 pieces and we can't do anything. And these are experienced paddlers, and they're like, can you come get us? And they ended up walking out, but they're like, I guess I should bring my repair kit.
And I want to piggyback on all of that. I don't care who you are. You need to let somebody know where you're going. And I'll just relay a particular story that happened a few years ago. I told you all earlier, basically every Tuesday or Thursday, I go do the bottom of the river, right? And so I'm halfway, this one's delivering Katie back, and I get a phone call that says, such and such is doing that section tonight too, and they're lost. And it's like, I didn't even know they were down there. And so, it's that thing, if their phone's getting ready to die, I'm halfway to Houston, etc. And, she starts sending me pictures of where she is. Well, fortunately, I've been down there enough where it's like, okay, well, all you need to do is follow this levee and it will take you to the exit and you go on. But nobody was with her. And she hadn't let anybody know ahead of time that was happening. I don't know how many times Virginia has said, hey, I'm paddling today from, the house down to Fentress. Like, that's fine. I'm working on boats. I care less on one hand. But on the other hand, I'm just jealous because I can't go. But on the other hand, I know that if I don't hear back from Virginia in the next 5 or 6 hours, even if it's something related, it's like, hey, where are you? I haven't heard back from you, and I know that you went to do this. That's what it gets. Friends take care of friends. But if you start acting like you're 17-year-olds and don't tell anybody where you are, then they can't bail you out of the situation. We don't want to have to bail anybody out, but we want to be available to if you need us. So that's, I will say that's the good thing about those message boards and stuff Patty's so happy about.
Find your friends.
Let other people know where you're going.
When you're saying you run the bottom, I know it says that one checkpoint down there is private property and you can't get on it. So where are you putting in and taking it out?
Swinging bridge.
Legal to do?
Swinging bridge is what he
No,
means.
it's not accessible.
Right.
Except for
Right, so you can't put in there, so where can you put it?
You probably need to find a friend that has private property.
Okay, so you're using non-public access?
Right.
Okay.
You can put in at Tivoli and go up and back. A lot of people will do that because that's a public campground that you can just pay to park at. And once you get to Tivoli, you're probably looking at 3 miles to the saltwater barrier, 3 miles to the exit of Alligator Lake, and then you can just keep going up and then come back.
So there's a low enough flow that you can paddle up the river?
If it hasn't just rained a lot.
It's generally kind of a pain that no matter what the stretch from the Highway 35 bridge to the saltwater barrier, because it's pretty narrow. But once you get up past that, it's generally not too big. And I don't mean to be dismissive of your question. It's just like I'm not going to give all my secrets the
No,
way.
no, I'm just saying, I mean, if there's no public access, there's no public access. I
If
guess.
you don't wanna go upstream and then down, you can put in at Victoria 59, and I'll tell you, from Victoria 59 to DuPont is so curvy that,
105 turns.
yeah, in a really windy, low, dry year like we're having, you can get trees that fall in the river, and it's good to know where those log jams are. So that's not, although I didn't say that that's one of the most technical stretches out there, if you do it, you're not hurting yourself, because things fall in the water there all the time. And don't tell everybody if you find a log jam, because
That's what I said.
yeah, you have a leg
Jay for the
up.
win.
Yeah.
Only I said that we're talking about you can put other stuff on.
A second ago, when Holly was saying, you know, when you go out on a training run, bring your repair kit. What I heard with that, you need to train with weight. You would be really surprised how many people bring the bare minimum on a training run, and then when you go to start the race, you pick your boat up to get into the lake, and you're like, holy cow, this weighs a lot. And it's because you finally have everything you need. You know, maybe you don't necessarily need to take all those items specifically, but take a couple gallons of water just for the weight itself and move it around. See where you need that weight to be, because you would be kind of surprised whenever you go, you know, in May to start packing your boat and get it ready for the race. You're like, where do I need to put all this? Where's it gonna go? And if you can just start figuring all that stuff out sooner, it is so much less stressful.
And as a team captain, you need to know where everything is stored in the boat. Because when they become loopy and they don't, they're like, I've got a hole in the boat, I have no clue where I put my repair kit. You can tell, well, you put it here in, you know, the red dry bag or in the back hatch, or, you know, you need to know where everything is placed in
We
the
did
boat.
that last year, very specifically, when we were at Virginia's house, they were loading the boat, and it's like, where is the repair kit? Okay, back hatch, whatever, you know, where is, and so.
Spray skirt.
The spray skirt, because it's going to happen, because, you know, once you get up around 36 hours of being awake and active, we all sound like a bunch of drunks. And the longer it goes, then you sound like a guy who's been on a bender for about 5 days. Whatever that sounds like. You know, so that's just hard information to remember, especially the bigger the boat gets. You know, one-man boat, it's not too hard to track down everything. Two-man boat, a little more difficult. When you get into multi-man boats, man, people are cramming stuff wherever they can find a home.
Somebody have a question?
In terms of security, I don't know, you guys like use webbing and carabiner clips, stuff like that, or?
So carabiners
The
are
question
great.
was how to secure things in the boat.
I like to attach stuff to the foam, like they talked about foam that you're gonna stick your water jug in. You can put all sorts of, you can poke stuff into it like, you know, zip ties, and you can zip tie your mandatory items to it, like your flares. That way if you had an issue in the boat, in the bay, your flares would be accessible. Also, don't wait until like you're in the bay needing to use a flare to learn how to use a flare, because you can't do it at 2 a.m. after completing the course. So look at your flare instructions, and I know, have you talked about the bags you make?
I was going to say the
Okay.
Velcro bag.
Holly?
Let's go back to the flares for a second.
Okay.
Number one, they're supposed to be attached to somebody.
In
a
solo.
solo boat.
In solo.
And everybody needs to know where they are. But I want to put an exclamation point on what she said about knowing how to use them before you get out there. You know, if you've ever turned over in the bay, it doesn't matter if it's daylight or dark, it's already kind of disoriented. And I can, you know, when she said that, I can just imagine myself out there having, you know, knocked one contact lens off and I'm floating around, got a hold of these orange flares, and, you know, trying to find my reading glasses, assuming Curry hadn't stolen. unscrew these things, and then, you know, it's just, you know, I'm more than likely to shoot myself in the face at that point if I'm not careful. So it's certainly worth the effort to know how your equipment works, whatever that piece of equipment is, before the race starts. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. So Holly, if she hasn't told you yet, she is a masterful spray skirt maker. Don't wait until May to ask her to make you a spray skirt. Get in line now. Do what?
It won't happen in May.
Yeah, it won't happen in
Or
May.
you'll pay through the...
Yeah, I mean, how much money you got? So the other thing she makes is these little mesh bags that are good for food, or you can rivet some mesh bags into, oh good. Yeah, so you can use these for food bags, but also you can get some food bags and rivet them into the side of your boat so that you can keep your, you know, the things that you're not throwing back to your team captain. I personally like bags on the side of my boat because there's just a ton of stuff that you've got to keep the whole way down the river, and that's easier. Another trick I do,
And go back, we're up out of the water too.
yes, don't rivet them to the bottom of your canoe because A, you don't want rivets on the bottom of your canoe, but also you want everything as dry as possible. Things that are wet are heavier than things that are dry, so keep everything as dry as possible.
And we use Velcro. We attach the
Oh,
Velcro
yeah,
on each side, and this just Velcros on and off.
so your food bags.
Yeah,
yes.
for those storage bags on the side.
Velcro your swim
We,
bags. Yeah.
Joe's very good with cement.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, have y'all seen an ice pack? Yes? Y'all haven't talked about it? Okay, this is going to be your best friend for multiple reasons. You're gonna pee on yourself, it's gonna happen. So, one in your lap for it to melt all over your lap is kind of nice because you're not gonna smell great by the end of the race. So, I like one ice pack around my neck, and I like one in my lap, and it's also clean. It's clean water, so it's better than jumping in, like I said, at DuPont, because it's not that gritty water that's gonna create a bunch of blisters. These ice packs are phenomenal. Holly also makes ice packs. So, in other words, now
You just also use, if you don't want to do fancy ones, those are just towels sewed up with Velcro, or you can use the really long tube socks and you do a zip tie at the end, just trim it off. You can use those as well.
It's not as efficient, and
Yeah.
it's certainly more wasteful, but that's, this is compartmentalized, and the fact is that terry cloth is not gonna dry out as fast. And besides that, we all tried to get rid of tube socks when we got out of junior high.
And team captains, you keep a supply of those, you fill it with ice, and you offer it pretty much starting at Staples on because they're hot. And then you just keep buying your ice, and then
which reminds me. So,
you just fill them up.
Don't put too much ice in there. I mean, you want to have a good amount, but you don't want to pack them so full because it does.
Yeah,
Friction.
You can get them so full that you look like one of those people who's been in a car wreck, and, you know, got the neck brace on, and
So something that's a little bit surprising is that it can be mid-June, and I always get cold at night because you've been working all day long, and then the sun goes down, and you know, some people tend to pee more at night for some reason. I get cold. So team captain, kind of read how your team is doing. If they don't know how they're going to react to ice in their water and ice packs, most people probably don't want an ice pack after sunset. You know,
Yeah.
would you agree?
no, I quit using them probably about 4 or 5 in the afternoon because I'm like you, man. I get the shivers if I get in the shade at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, also as team captains, when you're during the heat of the day, make sure that any liquids that you're giving them are, you know, cold. You know, when Holly showed you the jug, and there's all different sizes or types likes that I make sure that the water that I put in here during the day is already cold, and that the ice is just kind of extra on there. And I've gotten empty jugs back where there's still a little bit of ice in the bottom, which that's what you want. But as the sun starts going down, I'll, talk with your team beforehand, but usually we'll just use, either cool water or just regular temperature water, so that their body then isn't having to use extra energy to warm themselves up because they're drinking cold water. So you need to talk to your team about that.
Yeah, I always take a windbreaker, which is great.
Or a space blanket.
Something else that's on a real serious note is keeping your body temperature cool. Be very sensitive to what's going on with your own body. I was paddling once and it was 4 in the afternoon, no joke, it was like 105, and my teammate is kind of delirious because it's the 3rd day and it's super low water in here, which we potentially could have. And she just kind of, I'm going down for a minute, no big deal. And we see her and she opens up her jacket and she starts putting her jacket on, and it's 4 in the afternoon and the sun's blazing, and she goes, I'm cold. And my other partner, we were going through, she goes, oh no you're not, and pulls us over into the shade and then baptizes her in the water. And 5 minutes later she's like, oh my gosh, it's hot. How was I cold? It's her body, she was overeating essentially. And so we loaded her up with some, drink, took some electrolytes, got her cooled off, and then we were good. But that's a stage. If you start feeling cold and you know you should not be cold, that's a sign, and you need to pay close attention to that and address it immediately.
And as a general rule, the first day, and Virginia is very correct in that, once you get past Gonzales, the water starts getting dirtier. I mean, just because it's carrying sediment load from up higher. And certainly by the time you get down to DuPont, it's kind of like the Rio Grande. It's too thick to drink and too thin to plow. But that first day, you can hop in and out of the water enough, and you're having to hop in and out of the water. Get yourself good and wet. And I hate being wet. If I could figure out a way to go from San Marcos to Cedar without ever getting wet, I would be a really happy camper. But it's kind of weird for a canoe racer, I know, but I do. I don't like to swim. I don't like to tube. I hate being in the water. I like being on the water. But hop in and cool yourself down, because unless we've got those random years where thunderstorms in the day, 75 degrees.
Which has happened, and you don't realize how cold that's going to make you either. So prepare for that. Prepare for the extreme hot and the extreme cold, because you really don't know what you're going to get. Does anybody have any final questions for any of us before Jay starts his reading?
So we talked about the repair kit and stuff like that. I've seen people, make these amazing repairs. We talked about the zip ties. What method are folks using if you find yourself needing to poke a hole in your carbon fiber boat? How do people do that?
Why would you need to?
To put zip ties through?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the question is, what kind of a tool would you need? A Leatherman is the answer.
And then probably a pair of pliers to hold the other end of the nut. Anyways, your screwdriver should be able to go through it if you get on it or something. The Leatherman's kind of heavy, so some people don't really take the Leatherman.
That takes care of all my screwdriver needs.
Yeah.
But you were asking to poke hole to put the zip tie through?
Yeah, you crash your boat. I just wonder what people normally use to poke a hole that they're going to need to get their zip tie through.
My tools that I take are a 3/8 wrench, a number 2 screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver, and my leather. That's all the tools I take. Because with that, I can with the knife on my Leatherman, I can cut the fiberglass I might use to make a repair. It gives me a pair of pliers and a second screwdriver, and it's got, I guarantee you there's probably not a boat out there I can't poke through, except for maybe some of John Boogie's early 6-man boats that I can't poke through with my Leatherman.
You know, another benefit to the Leatherman is if you break your boat and you duct tape, your hands cannot rip it 20, 30 hours into it, so that duct tape's nice to, or that Leatherman's nice to cut it.
The same with the flex tape. Flex
Yeah.
tape is super hard to cut if you don't like pre-cut it before you get going on the race.
And I bring kitty scissors because a lot, my hands are swollen and blistered and I can't open my food. So in my jug foam, right next to my seat, I'll have a pair of those kindergarten scissors and just like easily open it.
And like you can tie a piece of string to the end of those scissors, and then also like zip tie the end of that string to your phone so that you don't lose your scissors. You can essentially do that for everything.
I think someone asked about how you attach it, and talk about carabiners earlier. There's, odds are you don't need to move that thing from wherever you tied it in. It needs to be in whatever that space is. So I wouldn't, you know, and that goes with Kaitlin said about weight. I wouldn't have a carabiner. I just have a knot tied in the end of whatever string I've got there, so that, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. You know, I'm here to tell you, everything should have a purpose that you take it. You know, my favorite thing, I say very tongue in cheek, is when team members start saying, well, that just weighs a little bit. Oh, that just weighs a little bit. And that just weighs a little bit. Well, in a solo boat, not too bad. 2-man boat, get a little worse. You get in a big boat, and all of a sudden everybody's things that didn't weigh a little bit add up to weigh a whole bunch of something. Or, you know, because it all adds up. And we're all guilty of it. You know, it's like every one of us is going to add something to our list at the check-in that we're just like, oh man, if I just had one more of X. So think about that, because, you know, again, it's like we talked about the weight of paddles. You know, the weight of whatever that thing that you never ever are going to use is going to get picked up every time you pick up that boat.
A spare paddle is worth the wait though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always have a spare
And a spare hat.
A spare hat, yes. When you're training, my husband does not wear a hat every time, or glasses. And so protect your skin and your eye, like do the sunscreen and the whole shebang like you're gonna race, because the whole year adds up, so.
I'm not sure if this would really apply, but we talked about not being able to really give certain items to the boat. Can you take things from them besides garbage and water?
Once you take it, they can't have it back.
Okay, like if you wanted to lighten the load.
Yes, but I'll tell you, my first year, I did not think we were going to be in the bay for as long as we were gonna be. So we gave pretty much all of our weight. We put it by the boat and didn't take it with us. And so we had very little in the boat other than like our required stuff and like one thing of applesauce. So one thing I would tell you is when you are going into the bay, even if it's glass, take a little bit extra food, take a little bit of extra water, because you just don't know how long you're gonna be out there.
When you're talking about spare paddles, are you saying like one per person or one boat or one for two people?
Probably for a 2-man, if you have one extra single blade, you'll be fine. Yeah.
It's just a preference, whatever you know, we take one for each person, but I think it's.
Oh, you do?
Well, the other thing about that too is when Kristen and I raced this year, my paddle is about 4 inches longer than hers. And not really, but I mean, it's significant enough to where if we only took a spare that fit her, you know, it's going to put me in a position that's going to start hurting at some point if I have to use it. So, but if everybody in the boat uses call it a 50-inch paddle, then one's going to get you through it, more than likely. Now that I say it, that's always going to break.
And also, if some of you are gonna double and single, then, you know, comes in the question of, are you gonna take a spare double? That's something to consider, but most of the time, novices won't start with singles and doubles.
Well, they
Yeah.
like
Oh, if you're racing true novice, yeah.
As far as ice packs go and those water jugs, can you swap them or can you just supply water and
Oh, this, I just took a second to realize it. You don't have to give, so my team captain's gonna give this to me. Gonna go, gonna get to the next bridge. I'm gonna throw it out. Hope I didn't put it in some place they have to go swimming for it or something. And then they're gonna give me a fresh one. So you don't have to keep changing out the same one. It's a rotating thing. You can get water and ice in any container that's available.
A while ago, when I said I wouldn't disagree with her, if you're in a six-person boat and everybody's somewhat the same size, you're gonna bring 6 extra pounds, that's too much, but you need to have some spare, whatever it is too.
I think that's it for us. I would just wrap up by saying thank you guys for coming to this. The state people who run safety, my dad, probably really appreciate that. Y'all probably won't be the people to turn the wrong way up the Blanco. Yeah. Thanks for having enough respect for the river to be here, and we hope to see you all in June.
Or March at the next.
Oh yeah, come March.
Thank you guys so much. I don't know if y'all are sticking around, if y'all are splitting. No, team captain did bring me kind of along with what all happened. But we're going to take about a 10-minute break because it's been about 2 hours, and that means if you haven't peed, you're probably dehydrated.
Okay, we're going to wrap up this part 3 of the safari seminar on a 10-minute break, and we'll be returning in just a few minutes.